Manila. Next, I would like to call on the students of Ateneo de Cagayan for their presentation.
Good day to our administrators, faculty, and fellow students from AJCU Asia Pacific. Greetings from Cagayan de Oro City, Mindanao, the Philippines. Mayong hapon to my companions here, Chaim, Shilina, Carlston, Ben, our OICN Director, Dr. Sheila, and our University President, Father Marstan. I'm Andre from Xavier Ateneo, and this afternoon, allow me to share with you our perspectives on the theme of reimagining post-COVID higher education along with our pandemic or crisis experiences. So how did COVID-19 affect our learning process? To begin with, we all had to struggle. It was never easy to drastically shift to a new mode of learning from the familiar face-to-face in-person learning. Many were doubtful and challenged. We knew we had to become more flexible. We knew at the very beginning that it was going to be a stretching time for many of us. Many students experienced financial incapacity, unstable mental health, and the lack of opportunity to access learning materials due to weak internet connection. These challenges hampered the quality of students' learning process, but also the very opportunity and right to learn. Many had to adjust. It was never easy to not easily connect and reach out with friends and program mates during the isolation. At times, we felt alone. However, after the grieving process that time had allowed us, we eventually had to get on with ourselves. We had to ride through with what was available for us at the moment. Self-directed learning was the only option for us, and it meant more responsibility to take charge of ourselves and the future we are creating through our education. It is because also of the kindness and cura personalis manifested by many of our teachers, formators, and administrators that had allowed us to feel the burden a little lighter. They continue to listen to us and our needs and concerns. It is the hope to reach our dreams, help our families, and to help serve better our communities, especially those in greater need, that drives us to carry on despite the many limitations and difficulties. Second, how did COVID-19 affect students' activities, projects, programs in our university? We miss the vibrance and energy of university student life. In Xavier Ateneo, we used to have huge and fun events and projects. These all were challenged because of the many restrictions brought by the health crisis. But again, Ignatian indifference allowed us to draw out the best projects and activities that we can pull off even in our only available mode of implementation, which is online. Because of COVID-19, a lot of university organizations had to halt its operations. It created a wider gap within our community that our institution continues to reconnect with today. A lot of students had a hard time strengthening ties with their interests through organizations. At the same time, it allowed a new phase of leadership and student governance to rise. It challenged student leaders and active student organizations to rise to the occasion and still create spaces for growth for the student community. The pandemic truly has reshaped how we approach organizing activities and initiatives, fortifying relationships with our constituents and fellow students. In these extraordinary times, we have been approaching things extraordinarily. The fire of Magis was not put out. Third, how did we cope with the pandemic? The process of coping can be different from one person to the other. Some students have become vulnerable, some have become braver. Sadly, some lost themselves in the process and chose to end their suffering. It really was and is a difficult time, but we continue to press on. We generally have remained persistent and adaptive to the extreme changes of the times. We also found ways to interact and connect with one another online. We had to shift our energy and attention to things we can control. We focused on the things that mattered most to us, connections and friendships with people, fellow students. Student organizations didn't become an added responsibility nor burden to many of us. With the available student organizations, they have become a safe haven for many students. It had become an avenue to express, grow, and be joyful during these times of distancing and isolation. How then can we reimagine post-COVID classrooms? Turning back to before is no option. We have to see all things anew, summoned to us by the theme of this year's Ignatian Year. Health protocols will be in place for long and for always. Finally, being able to reconnect and deepen our human relationships by engaging in the rigorous and formative Jesuit education is something to look forward to post-COVID. Since most of us here from Xavier are graduating, our only hope is that Xavier Ateneo continues to deepen its Filipino, Catholic, and Jesuit identity through its students during the new and better normal. As a Filipino university, it should continue its efforts to contribute through the social development of the people, Filipino people, most especially here in Mindanao. We have to be even more generous and in solidarity with our countrymen. As a Catholic university, preferential love for the poor and suffering must be deeply embraced, most especially to those who are recovering with most difficulty from the tragedies of the pandemic. As a Jesuit university, the fire for mission and service must be renewed. Students, along with everyone in the community, must be fueled by the desire to serve the faith, promote justice, dialogue with cultures and religions, protect the environment, and uphold the shared Ignatian values of magis, cura personalis, and finding God in all things. We know that Xavier Ateneo is on the right track and ready to reimagine post-COVID education and learning. Our only hope is that all these be materialized, especially as it approaches the eventual transfer to its campus of the future. So it is clear in the new normal, higher education must not mean to stay and seclude ourselves inside our walled classrooms anymore. Holistic Filipino, Catholic, and Jesuit education means going outside to where the discomforts are. We are doing that, and in the new normal, we must continue to do even more. That is where St. Ignatius would want us to go in order for us to really and truly set the world on fire. Daghang salamat. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to our student panelists from Ateneo de Cagayan or Xavier University. I would like to invite now our student panelist from Fujian Catholic University, Taiwan.
Can everyone hear my voice?
Yes, we can hear your voice.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Simon. I'm the presenter of Furin Catholic University. I think I have to say, COVID has entirely altered our life. We have to face the truth that COVID has created plenty of sadness and misfortune. As for us, some new forms of our education have been transformed to a new pattern. We can't deny that education through the online process increases a variety of inconveniences. However, it improves ourselves and strengthens the attitude which keep us staying in integrity as facing the most aggressive virus we had never ever met, because the crisis is a turning point. What we are going to share is about the experience during this period. Online classes will come with several negative impacts. First of all, it is quite boring to sit in front of the computer for a long time. Teachers can barely be well aware of a student's progress. On the one hand, teacher might not operate the online software for teaching or creating a promising interaction with students. Therefore, students would easily fail to concentrate on learning. Besides, learning in the long run with a computer or any other form of technology will lead to being physically exhausting. There are a couple of advantages in online learning. Firstly, online classes have reduced the waste of time. For example, we might run into a traffic jam or join some unnecessary conventions. Secondly, the internet helps us search for information that assists our learning progress in time. Furthermore, we can save more money since we were required to stay at home. Also, an online programs come with other experiences out of the school and personal improvement. Many educational platforms are offering free programs to everyone. Taking an example from me, I go to online classes studying political science. Another example, one of our friends joined the service program with Burmese this summer, using the internet to interact with local students and learning more about the conduct of living. YouTube is a useful and helpful media when it comes to self-improvement, like learning how to manipulate Patreon. What's more, pandemic improved us to review ourselves, reconsidering the plan, and gradually realizing what kind of person we want to be in the future. For example, social media help us to perform our features, so we will master how to manage our image and impress someone. The virus has made us stand together and stronger than ever. We have lost many loved ones during this crisis. Yet, we didn't quit fighting no matter how COVID tried to attack us. We are aware of a sense of only abiding the guidance while we survive. We strengthen the relationship with our family, encourage them to get vaccinated, and lighten things up when they are depressed. Furthermore, a saying goes, the preface of a life always starts from calmness. COVID offers us an opportunity to develop ourselves so that we are able to refuel through our mind. COVID let us rethink our future by experiencing this huge change. We get enlightened and explore a variety of choices for future careers. In a nutshell, online education set out the barriers between students and teachers, lowering the interest and the motivation in learning since the internet works less efficiently than meeting in person does. Even though online learning is boring, we can spend more time with family and rethink how to enrich our ability for a further plan, like studying certain topic, reading, learning some professional skill. We develop ourselves more than we used to be capable of doing. The pandemic make a big change to our life. Finally, we are hoping the school or university around the globe will cooperate to establish a new platform to share the knowledge with every student in the world. In this way, we will help those who cannot access high-class education due to the geographical barriers or lacking development, creating more hope in this world. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a good one today.
You're on mute.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you. So I would like to say thank you to our Fujian Catholic University student for their presentation. I would now like to call on our next student from Ritchie Hall, Hong Kong.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Yang Chen Kit, or you can call me Christopher, and I'm the representative from Hong Kong, studying in the University of Hong Kong and currently residing in Ritchie Hall. First of all, I'm really honored to be a part of today's conference and given the opportunity to meet some of the students from different countries across the Asia Pacific. So after hearing some of you guys, I can definitely relate to your struggles and your problems as a fellow university student. And now I'm going to I'll try not to repeat some of your points, but I'll share more of my personal thoughts and experience from the Hong Kong context. So first of all, I'm going to talk about how the pandemic affects my learning process. So to begin with, just like most of the students, I find it quite hard to adjust myself into the online learning environment. In my university, Zoom is the major platform for most of the classes, and the necessary time wasted for the network problems, the technological problems, the breakout room distribution actually is quite time consuming. And in addition to that, the classroom setting is also somewhat inflexible. Because, for example, when we have questions in the breakout room and we're not able to immediately address the lecturer's help because he or she may be helping in another room and we have to wait till he or she comes to the room. So sometimes it's kind of inflexible. So other than that, I think that the learning effectiveness is somewhat reduced as well. Because I'm a student from the education faculty, I'm going to be a teacher, and I think that the effect brought by online classes is way different from face-to-face classes. Because in education courses, the lecturer often demonstrates different teacher talks, teacher gestures, expressions, and these are things that that is difficult to be demonstrated through a webcam. So moving on, I'm going to talk about how the pandemic affects me as a university student, the activities and programs. So first of all, as mentioned, I'm an education student, so I have to go to a teaching practicum, which I had to go to a primary school for 2 months to teach the primary kids. And fortunately, I was able to go to that practicum, face-to-face teaching, not until the last 2 weeks that I have to go to Zoom. But I still find difficulty in teaching because we have to wear a mask while teaching and it gets a lot of problems. First of all, it's really sweaty sometimes. And to speak clearly to students, you have to speak extra loud, and the primary kids still may find difficulty in hearing you. So it's kind of sad. And the more important thing is that the fun and interactive group activities have to be cancelled because of the COVID restrictions. So it's kind of dull classes, just me talking and talking. And other than the teaching practicum, all the sports competitions in my university are all cancelled. And it really affects me because I really love doing sports. And the courts and pitches are all closed. And that's kind of sad. And there was one competition that me and my teammates have been working so hard for 2 years, and all just the time and effort just gone to waste. Yeah. Oh, so here's a photo of me and my primary kids with the mask on. Now I'm going to talk about how me and my friends cope with the pandemic. As I'm living in Ritchie Hall, it was kind of boring at first, so you can see what I do basically every day. Or we go back to our own homes. So our lifestyle was having Zoom lesson and then video games and then Zoom lesson again and then video games again. And other than that, the one thing that really struck me the most was that we have to sit separately in the dining area. Because in my hall, in Ritchie Hall, it's kind of a tradition that when we have meals, we sit close to each other so we can like catch up and chat with each other after a long day. And it is usually like a very nice bonding moment for all of us. But now we have to sit like four on the table or even two on the table before. And we couldn't catch up as much as we could like before. So anyway, to deal with such boredom, I started to pick up some new habits. I started to learn some music production and recording. And I also started to engage in outdoor activities once the pandemic is much relieved. So me and my buddies will go to hiking and visiting different suburbs that I usually do not pay attention to. So like all these activities keep me refreshed, like rather than burying myself in my own room. So how would I actually reimagine the post-COVID classroom? So I think there are three main things that this pandemic has brought to learning that can be realized in the future. So first of all, I think that learning will be more innovative because more online resources are now utilized. For example, Kahoot, Mentimeter, and Perusal. All these like brought a new perspective, a different perspective towards classroom activities. Second of all, I think that classrooms are going to be more interactive. Especially in Hong Kong, classroom really lacks interaction. Teachers usually dominate the classroom discourse. They talk a lot, and when they ask a question, the questions are usually not responded by students. In online learning, this problem is actually addressed. Like not only these Kahoot or Mentimeter softwares can encourage interaction, but in Zoom, the chat function actually encourages us to talk because sometimes we're just too shy to voice out, but we can just type in the chat box and raise our own opinions. So thirdly, I think that learning is going to be much more visualized. I'm going to share one of my examples because a professor of mine who has been teaching me over like 3 years used to use those like PowerPoints that are as boring as you could imagine, like white background, black words and Times New Roman fonts, and that's it, nothing else. So not that I'm trying to blame her for like not being a good teacher or what, but I usually find myself like easier to not pay attention during her class. So after the pandemic, now we're fortunate enough to have face-to-face class, and her PowerPoints are totally different. Like she's like a new person to me. She used like vibrant colors, different photos and video attachments, all of these, which actually catches my attention during class, and I think most of my classmates as well. So this actually helps caters different learning diversities and people like me who are more sensitive towards visual learning. So to conclude, like all you guys do, I think that it's really unfortunate for us to go through such a hard time. But I know you have heard this a lot, but every coin has a flip side. I think that this pandemic is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us to learn and grow. So from the lens, as a community in the education context, I think that many new perspectives towards learning were introduced, and the fusion between like online learning and the traditional face-to-face learning would actually be very effective and efficient in the future. As an individual, from the perspective of an individual, I think that the pandemic made us rethink our own lives and the things we usually do not pay attention to, like the things around us, the interests we have, the real life communication with one another, all these that we do not pay attention to before the pandemic. It also taught us that we have to take the initiative to improve ourselves, like cherish every opportunity, rather than waiting for everything to go back to normal. Because the truth is, this is the new era after the pandemic, we like it or not. And we should never forget that we should strive to be a better person and strive to cultivate a better community no matter what. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you to our Ritchie Hall panelists for your presentation.